It's official. Nigeria is now the 7th most populous country in the world, with a population of 198 million people. This figure is from the chairman of the National Population Commission, NPC, Mr. DURUIHEOMA, who is in New York as we speak for the 51st session of the Commission on Population and Development. Since the last population census in 2006, there have been speculative figures of Nigeria's population above the official number declared that year. Experts have said Nigeria's population has been growing at an average rate of 6.5%. Little wonder then that the World Population Prospects predicts that by the year 2050, Nigeria will move from the 7th to the 3rd most populous country in the world. But with this figure comes the big question: is Nigeria prepared for this number of people? That is our focus on Nigeria Today. I am Segun Ojelade. I'm being joined in the studio by Professor Ken Ife. Professor Ken Ife is an economic development analyst. Prof, I welcome you to the program.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Prof, Nigeria's population is now 198 million. It hits everybody this morning like a thunderbolt. What's your initial reactions?
I think my reaction is that this is an earthquake, in the sense that if you look at CIA projections, is 2.45% population growth rate. The government works with about 3% growth rate. But what we've seen here is that the population was actually growing far in excess of 3%. Now, all the best estimates were that we are going to hit 200 million in 2020. We are now hitting the figure in 2018. 2018 hasn't even finished yet. So it means that we are going...
These figures is from 2000.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yes. So, but then we're going to see something dramatic. Now, the best estimates for 2030 is 300 million people. And 2050, 500 million. That's what places us number 3 in the 3rd most populous country in the world. Now, you have the right question. What does it mean to Nigeria? How prepared are we for this kind of figure? And I have to tell you that this is very, very serious. Let's do a little more analysis. If you look at the population distribution, you are going to see that about 54% will be young people.
Prof, okay, before we get into that,
okay.
Some analysts have disputed this figure, that is bloated. I mean, it's an estimate. It may not be correct. Maybe from all our population campaign that we've been doing is more effective than what we're seeing now. Don't you question the figure?
Well, the figure is not out of the blue, because is to be expected that we will, in the next 2 years, hit 200 million anyway. And those are very, very conservative estimates. So I'm not surprised that we have this kind of figure. But to doubt the figure, I don't quite buy that, because we do have sections of our communities that are growing at a phenomenal rate in terms of population. I mean, families, some people have 9, well, I have 7 children. There are some that have 19 children. So it's I couldn't say, we're not implementing China policy of one family, one child, you know. So, you know, the proliferation is there. So I don't have any statistical doubt as to the accuracy of this kind of figure.
Okay. If the figure is actual, is the way we are, is the number that it says we are, what's the implication of that kind of a thing?
Now, let us take sector. You get a better picture when you look at some sectors. If you take agriculture sector, it's not earthquake, it's tsunami.
Wow.
I'm telling you. Why? Because if you look at projections on agriculture for the year 2030, not far away, 12 years away, Ban Ki-moon said before he left that the world need to grow 30% more food by 2030. The climate change people says whatever we like, the world will grow 30% less food because of climate change factors. And when you bring it to Nigeria, our population was projected to be 300 million by 2030. From what we have seen now, it's probably going to be 350 million when I put these figures and roll the figures. Now, where are the challenges on this? Why the population growth is now, as we have seen, in excess of 3%, the biggest shock in this figure is that the urbanization rate, which we have all been projecting is 4.85%, is actually 6.5%.
Yes.
Now, that is where the tsunami lies, you know, because in 2030, 70% of people were expected to drift to urban areas. Then from the figure you have just shown, it's going to be more than 80% of our population drifting in urban areas. Now, where this is going to be potential crisis is because if you look at our food, even though Nigeria is 1 out of 5 countries in the world that produces more food than they require, than the only one in Africa, 30 to 70% of that food never make it into the food chain. And if you look at the people, the demography behind food production, the average age of our farmer is about 60 years. So by 2030, many of them are already on the departure lounge. Some have got tickets, some have got boarding pass. And the question is, where are the young people engaging in agriculture? They're all heading to the town, to the urban areas. And so there is serious issue around who is growing the food we are going to eat. Secondly, the reality today that we're actually producing more food, because you could see that from the Anchor Borrower Program and rice production, where we are hoping to do 3 million more, 5 million more tons of rice.
Well, where would they be?
But the thing is, whilst we are producing that, the growth rate in agriculture is only moved only from 3.06% to 4.38%. But that's not enough, because we have to grow food in excess of 6.5%, because that's the urbanization rate. Which means, give and take, 7% is the minimum that we should be growing our GDP, agricultural GDP growth rate. But there's another challenge on this. The second challenge is that whilst we are producing more food, you can see that in rice, we are going to be self-sufficient by end of this year.
Yes.
You know, touch wood.
Okay.
But a lot of this food are migrating out of the country.
Wow.
You remember when one governor complained that 50 trailers are moving grains out through the border? Yes. Why? Because of the devaluation in our currency. The surrounding neighbors, all the francophones, have a much stronger currency in the sense that 1 naira could buy 3 sefa, but now I can only buy 1.5 sefa. So our food is very cheap. And the impact of that on inflation is that's why inflation is slow in trending down. Now it's come down to 13.43% from 14.3. So that's where. But you could have been a lot less. When you look at all the core indices, excluding food, is around 11.5. It's low, 11%. So the inflation should really have been around that. But the food is about 19, 18, some more. So that is why it is going to be a serious crisis. Okay. And we're exporting our jobs. When we're exporting raw materials, raw food, we're exporting jobs. So we need to have a strategy.
Okay, so talking about strategies now, what are the options open to us? We are there already. The figures, the population figures are rising. Now, if you now look at the demography, the character of the population, is it anything to cheer?
No, the thing is that we are relatively young population. That over 64% in the young category means that we have to face employment issues. And in fact, let me conclude the agriculture sector analysis so that we can look at some other sectors, the impact on some other sectors. given that a lot of food, our food are relatively cheaper and are moving out, and also that when we are exporting raw, we are actually not getting taxes on those because we have free trade, free movement of goods, trades, and goods and services. So we're not charging duties on that according to the ECOWAS treaty. And of course, now with the continental free trade, it's still going to be the same. It will move eastwards. Now, the challenge is that as we're exporting jobs, our strategy must be to increase value addition at the world level. So we are talking about not less than 10,000 wards. We're talking about not less than 10,000 platforms for cottage industry processing. So that wherever you produce it, you're removing that 70% water and drying and creating jobs. And then when you export value added, liable to tax. Although again, within ECOWAS, you cannot tax if they have registered under ETLS, ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme. But if not, you have to tax them. So, but there are other charges that you can collect. So, but that's part of the agriculture story, but it is not the end of the story. If you look at Africa Union Declaration in 2014 in Malabo, you find that 80% of the people that grow the primary food we eat are women. Wow. 80% of the people that process the primary food are women. Now, 90% of the people who go to market to sell the primary food are also women. It shows that there has to be a discriminant policy in favor of women. We've already agreed that youth are terribly disadvantaged and the unemployment has reached crisis proportion. So what it means, in effect, is that government policy must target these two people. And I'm going to come to the solution of what we should advise President Buhari to do and what we should advise the Vice President and all the governors to do. Remind me to talk about those recommendations in relation to these three crises, this youth and women in agriculture. But let's look at the other sectors that are affected. If you look at education, the social inclusion sectors, yes, employment is a big one, is heavily affected by this because it's exacerbated the problem of unemployment. The other one is education. If you look at the human development index, the education level is low. The literacy level is low. You know, is really, really low, especially in many parts, especially the Northeast. So there's going to be a major impact on provision of primary education because there are more people than we have expected. Now look at health, primary health. That is affected. That is going to be more heavily affected than we had planned for. So we need to up the game in relation to those two. Okay. But the third one is the MSMEs, okay, which at the moment is 47 million by the 2015 figures. But if that figure is reviewed, they may well be 50 million MSMEs, that is micro and small and medium enterprises. Now that is the section that creates the jobs. At the moment, there are over 90% of the number of businesses. They have over 92% of the jobs. And in terms of their contribution to the economy is about 48%. So they are very prolific when it comes to creating jobs. So what it means is that we have to now tackle head-on the binding constraints around the MSME so that they can deal with the crisis we are having on those two areas. Okay.
Now, you call what is happening a tsunami, especially yes, in the agricultural sector. But we went out earlier in the day. Let's see what Nigerians, their initial reactions to these figures. What do Nigerians think and what do they even call it? Tsunami, earthquake, or what? We take a short break and we take those insights.
Officially, yes, 198 million. But some people are even doubting that there are more than that. Well, the population is not too much. It just depends on planning. If we plan very well, we can cater for everybody.
I think Nigeria is rich enough to cater for any population. If we are allowed to get jobs when we are supposed to get jobs, and if the country really sits down and thinks positively about its populace, I think Nigeria is good enough to cater for any number of, whatever the population is. I think we are capable of that.
Well, to me, 198 in Nigeria considering our vast land, it's not a big, it's not too large. In terms of infrastructure, I think that's where the major problem is.
Well, with the current economic challenge, I think the population is too much, and with the limited resources we have, I think government has to put measures in place to curb the number of child rates, so have to be able to cater for the whole citizens.
Population is not a disadvantage, it's an advantage. It's only to get a good government. If you have a good governance, you will just move the country up.
With this population, definitely we can survive if the government use all its resources at hand. For example, China is more than that, the population is more than 198, but still they are progressing.
Population is not too much now. We need more, and Nigeria can take care of them. They have money, we have money, let me just say it.
It's not a good thing, the economy is not even favorable. Things are hard and people are still giving birth. I'm just seeing from now to the next 5 years, what's it going to look like?
Prof, except for our last respondent, it's like Nigerians are not as alarmed about this. In fact, somebody will say, what is your alarm all about? China is more than us. People say we have land, you know. What gives them the confidence? Land, China, or, I mean, what do they see that you are not seeing?
That I'm not seeing. Well, you know, if you look at employment, China is 1.4 billion people, and we are now heading 200 million. So we are like China 7 times the Nigerian population.
Yes.
But they create 2.4 million jobs. So what it means is that Nigeria should have been creating 3 million jobs or 4 million jobs. No, 8 million jobs, in proportion. Sorry, in proportion to their 24 million jobs. We should be creating they were creating less than 1.5 million jobs. So we can't compare us to China because they are creating many times more jobs than us.
You say we have land, we have money.
We have land, better land. Nobody has better land unless Brazil. We are on the same belt with Brazil, and we have every agroecological zone in Nigeria. Swamp forest, mangrove, tropical forest. We have savanna, Guinea savanna, Sudan savanna.
So why are you afraid?
But we have issues, there's serious challenges, because I've told you that we are the biggest producer of food in Africa. But 30 to 70% of that food never make it in the post-service losses. And value addition needs to come into agriculture so that we can keep the jobs here. But let's go to a very critical area, which is what can government do?
Yes.
Now, we have our economic recovery and growth plan. Yes. EGP. Very robust document. But I don't think it is well ready for this kind of population explosion. And if you wait on this plan till 2020, we will have even more challenges. So what I'm going to suggest to President Buhari and the governors are, first of all, at the federal level, we have to subject our industrial policy, fiscal policy, monetary policy, trade policy. We have to subject them to social and economic sustainability tests, and in particular target three subsectors, which is the MSME, impact on MSME, impact on women, gender women, and impact on youth employment. Now, this is to carry out a proactive review of those policy areas. But secondly, any document that hits the desk of a Federal Executive Council or governor in their ESCO, send it back and ask them to address you on social and economic sustainability impact. So let that document come back telling you what is the impact on youth employment, what is the impact on gender, and what is the impact on MSMEs. You will change the country if you do that. So you're not going to wait for another plan. This is the strategy to mainstream the challenge, to mainstream what I have just mentioned.
Yes.
That MSME finance issues, and then youth employment. Because as these things are coming through and you're passing them and you're spending and the assembly is approving budget, subject all these to these parameters. Do you see results? Mainstreaming.
Do you think there are people, either at the states, local government, and even at federal level, that are seeing some of these things that you see, how can we get our governments, decision makers, to actually see some of these things you are saying and to have the political will to be able to do some of these your prescriptions and others?
Well, we just have to keep saying them. But you're doing a good job giving the time for this kind of analysis to come to the airwaves. Many people don't give the time don't give prime time for this. But I think we'll try to give them practical solutions, because if you make these 3 items standing item, agenda item, you know, in UK, we went through this. We went through equal opportunity. So we had to get equal opportunity as a standing agenda item. So every meeting, you always have implications for MSME, implications for youth employment, implications for... So when you make any presentation, you have any meeting, there are standing items on the agenda. You will always evaluate it. So when CBN goes to have their monetary policy committee meeting, when they want to decide what they want to do, they will also consider the impact on these 3 items. So this is what you do. And this is a mainstreaming strategy.
Okay. Prof, government does not give birth. So probably government is not a contributor to these burgeoning population figures.
I don't think so. Government has policy. Government policy can affect population growth.
You and I are, and the ordinary people on the streets, they are the ones procreating at a rate that is comparable to probably the rabbit, for instance. Now you have 7, I have less. But there are people out there that have 20, 30, and some of them, like you had there, don't even believe there is any problem. Now, how can the people, you've advised government, you advise, how do we advise ourselves? Because we are the ones contributing to this problem.
First of all, I have to tell you that economic hardship and very high unemployment, youth unemployment, is actually restraining many of the boys and girls from getting married. So the number would have been double. If things were good and they were all procreating, it would have been far more. Because people are looking at the economic cost of procreation. But I said it's government policy that has to look at population control. We have to start putting population control on the government decision framework and start discussing that. You know, and then it's not something you just do at government level. It's something that has to involve culture, because religion. You know,
it's a very controversial issue.
Yes, it's very, very controversial. So you have to take it, consult very, very widely, so that you don't offend some religion.
Now, because of the projections that we have and the rate at which the population is still growing and the fears that you have expressed, now, what are those things that you, from your point of view, we want everybody to put in place, quick wins that can help us out of this impending tsunami, like you put it?
Yes, I've already described the agricultural terrain, because that is where 70% of the employment is. And everybody have equal opportunity in engaging in a small fish farm in your compound, as you know, small tanks. You can have poultry here, you can have... So everybody is empowered to do that. Even the Nigerian law encourages politicians to get into that, and civil servants. You don't get penalized if you get into agriculture. They don't see it as a conflict. So it's very, very, very encouraging. But what is more important is switching resources. How do you ensure you switch resources to target the MSME, the youth employment, and gender? Knowing the critical role of women. As I told you, 80% are producing the food, 80% of the people are women, and processing it and selling it 90%. That's Africa Union. It's not my figure, it's Africa Union. And that's why Africa Union says we should grow 10%. The growth should be 10% on the agriculture. And national budget should have 10% for agriculture, but we have only 4%. And even interest rate should be about 5% for agriculture. You know, this is how bad it is. We need to get it down so that everybody can engage.
Okay. I must thank you, Professor Ken Ife. We cannot exhaust all the issues concerning population and population growth on this program. I guess we'll have to create a bigger platform where we can continue to talk about this. I must thank you sincerely for your comments.
It's my pleasure. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Until we come your way with yet another edition of the program, Nigeria Today, and that will be on Monday, tomorrow. Do join us, 7:30 same time. Bye-bye.